Aries, welcome to your 2026 horoscope. My name is Adina. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and in this forecast, we will be going over all of the major energy for the year of 2026 and how it will be affecting your rising sign. So, we will touch on the Mercury retrogrades, the eclipses, the nodes entering Leo and Aquarius. We will also touch on the Saturn and Neptune in Aries energy, Jupiter moving into Leo, Uranus moving into Gemini, and also the Venus retrograde at the end of the year. So, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you align with my energy and enjoy my content. Now, let's get right into it. So, 2026, we have all of our Mercury retrogrades in water signs. So these Mercury retrogrades are going to be deeply emotional, deeply psychological, and deeply spiritual. So keep that in mind. Now, our first Mercury retrograde of the year is in Pisces, and Mercury will station retrograde February 25th or 26th, depending on your time zone, because Mercury literally stations retrograde at midnight where I am, at 22 degrees of Pisces, and then will station direct March 20th at 8 degrees of Pisces. The second Mercury retrograde of the year will be from June 29th to July 23rd in Cancer, and Mercury will station retrograde at 26 degrees of Cancer and station direct at 16 degrees of Cancer. And then the final Mercury retrograde for the year will be in Scorpio from October 24th to November 13th from 5 degrees of Scorpio to 20 degrees. So Mercury will station retrograde at 20 degrees of Scorpio and then station direct at 5 degrees of Scorpio. So also too, while we go through this horoscope, just keep your own personal planets and placements in mind so that you know if you have any personal degree points around the degree points we will be discussing in this horoscope. Because if you do, you will be feeling this energy on a more intense personal level. So let's take a look at how it's kind of showing up in your chart. So the very first Mercury retrograde we are getting in Pisces is in your 12th house. And the 12th house is the hidden house. It's really where everything kind of goes to hide, people, places, things. It rules things like places like hospitals, asylums, retreat centers. And then, excuse me, it can rule the subconscious, it can rule secrets, it can rule basically everything that is hidden is kind of in there. But also karma and past lives and anything that you were suppressing. So I have a feeling that with this energy, because this Mercury retrograde is shortly after Saturn and Neptune enter Aries and form that conjunction, something really big may happen, or there could definitely be an energy shift or something shift for sure, because that's a really big transit in your first house of you, where you're having to pull away from the world and just rethink, reevaluate, regroup. And that very much can be this kind of first Mercury retrograde energy, is that you're feeling like something big is coming, or there's just something kind of coming to your awareness where you're feeling like you just have to retreat for a little bit, um, and maybe just be alone and regroup, get your footing back. Um, then that second Mercury retrograde that we have for the year from June 29th to July 23rd in Cancer is in your fourth house of home, family, property, and real estate. Also, the fourth house rules what you do in private, what you do once you go home after work. The 10th house is your career and your public image and everything that you kind of put out in the world and what you are known for. And the fourth house very much is everything that you are doing kind of behind the scenes after work, after you close the doors. So there could be, again, rethinking, reevaluating, or this could be showing up. Maybe you're thinking about moving, or there's something going on with your home that you're having to reevaluate. But that second Mercury retrograde is taking place in that fourth house. There could even be something that maybe you're having to address or go back on with around family or family dynamics. And then the third and final Mercury retrograde for the year is in Scorpio, which is in your eighth house. And the eighth house rules things like your partner's finances, money coming in from outside resources, taxes, inheritance. Um, Debt is in the eighth house. The eighth house also rules deep psychological healing and transformation. Death is in the eighth house. There's quite a lot packed actually in that eighth house. It's a very deeply psychological house. Um, it also rules like the occult. It can be quite an intuitive and spiritual energy as well, but there may be something that you're having to rethink or reevaluating, or there could be some type of really deep psychological purging, and resetting going on at this time, because this Mercury retrograde is also going to coincide with the Venus retrograde. So there's going to be quite a lot going on in this area of your life. Seventh house of relationships and eighth house of like psychological healing and transformation, and or maybe even your partner's having to go through something. There could be something that you're having to address around debt or bills or a loan. It can show up in that way, or inheritance. Also, the eighth house rules fears, so it can also show up in that way, that maybe there's something coming up around like deep psychological fears, and you're having to address it or like meet it head on in a sense. Now, our 2026 eclipse dates. Our first eclipse of the year is our solar eclipse in Aquarius at 28 degrees, which is February 17th, 2026. And this is going to be the first eclipse to initiate us into these set of eclipses in Leo and Aquarius. And so we've had the eclipses in Virgo and Pisces since January of 2025. And we will find now this year we start to make that transition into new areas of our life that will be going through massive changes. Now, on March 3rd, we have our total lunar eclipse in Virgo at 12 degrees. And then our second set of eclipses for the year will be in August, where we have our total solar eclipse in Leo at 20 degrees, August 12th, and our lunar eclipse in Pisces at 4 degrees, August 28th. This is our final eclipse in Pisces. This is not the final eclipse in this axis. We will have one more eclipse in Virgo once we get into the new year. So this chapter doesn't quite close just yet, not until we get into 2027. However, it does start to finalize and complete. So whatever you've been moving through in this area of life since the beginning of 2025, which actually we will get into because I pulled some charts. So let's take a look. So here you've had the nodes in your sixth and your 12th house since January of 2025. So again, that 12th house, there's been a lot of isolation, a lot of wanting to kind of pull away from the world, a lot of having to possibly address, like Saturn's been transiting that 12th house as well the last few years. And Saturn's all about karma, life lessons. The North Node represents a new direction or a new energy that our soul truly wants to move into. And so if there were any like toxic behaviors or anything along those lines that are just no longer in alignment, they may have come up for review to your awareness, and you may have had no other choice but to just address them head on and make some shifts and changes over the last couple of years with the North Node and Saturn in that 12th house. Now, the South Node being in Virgo in your sixth house, which your sixth house rules work, health, and daily routine. Pets are also in the sixth house, nutrition habits, kind of like the routine you do on a day-to-day basis. Also, your routine that you do at work. This is one of the also like work houses. So this can also represent something around your work or business, like the sixth house is like the daily labor that you put into your work. The 10th house is like represents like the actual job or career. And the sixth house is like the labor that you kind of put into that. And so having that south node in the sixth house, there may have been a lot you were moving away from because the south node represents energy that's no longer in alignment, or aspects of our life that are no longer in alignment that we are feeling pulled from or that we have to move away from. Either way, there's like shifts and changes in these areas of life while the nodes and eclipses take place here. So I did post January 2025. I actually have it on my new YouTube channel here. I believe if you look um, in the video section, you can check out that video. But I talked a lot about the nodes being in Virgo and Pisces, and just on a general level, Virgo very much being this energy of kind of needing to control outcomes or the need to control like certain aspects of our life and how the South Node being here, things would come up in our life. Like if there's areas of our life that we hold on to tight or feel the need to control, that there would be dynamics showing up over the year of 2025, really forcing us and giving us no other choice but to surrender and just move into that North Node Pisces energy, which is learn to trust the universe and surrender and let go of that need to kind of control certain dynamics of our life or control outcomes. So the nodes entering Aquarius and Leo is actually your fifth and your 11th house. So the North Node being in your 11th house is all about your friendships, your social groups that you are connected to, any large groups or affiliations, associations, that you're kind of tied to. Hopes and dreams also are in the 11th house, your aspirations. Um, I also think like social medias, I know some astrologers say social media is on the ninth, which I see it can be, but I always tie social media to the 11th because it just makes more sense to me. It's like large groups of people. And this just happens to be on the internet. I don't know. But the North Node being here, there's something new that's going to be developing in this area of life, whether it's that you develop some new social groups or friends or start pulling out of that kind of isolation phase that you've been in for the last couple of years with all that energy in the 12th house. A lot of that energy is now like that 12th house is pretty much empty now. Like Neptune's been in Pisces for 14 years. Neptune's out. Saturn's been in Pisces for the last since March 2023. Saturn's out. And now the North Node's going to be out. So there very much is going to be this shift from pulling away from the world and isolation and feeling like you need to kind of like even there may have been an aspect of yourself where you haven't been as sociable as you normally are, and that can all change now and really start with that first eclipse in Aquarius in February. On February 17th. But definitely pay attention around this time, like what is showing up for you. Because what happens is, and when I say this, this is from my own personal experience. I track transits all the time in my own personal life so that I can talk about it with all of you. But I also track transits in a lot of other people's lives, clients and family members and friends. And what I can say is the one thing with these eclipses is that th- when the nodes are transiting a certain area of our chart, there's a story that's playing out now. There's changes that are going to take place, and whatever starts with that first eclipse, every eclipse after that, there's going to be like a new chapter to the story. So let's say you make a move with that first eclipse, there's going to be something around that move that shows up 6 months later with the next eclipse. Like every time we have an eclipse, there's some new energy and new dynamics around the story that's playing out. So pay attention to what shows up around this time period a few weeks before and a few weeks after, especially with eclipses. You can find, around friends or social groups, um, because that'll give you an idea of maybe what you're in for the next couple of years. And then that fifth house rules children, creativity, passion, romance. Everything you do for fun is in that fifth house. So there's going to be changes in that area as well. There may be some things you're moving away from that you are no longer in alignment with because of that south node. We will also have Jupiter here come the middle of the year. So there's definitely going to be some shifts as well when it has to do with children, when it has to do with romantic connections, when it has to do with even how you connect within romantic connections, and not necessarily one-on-one relationships because that's in your seventh, but just how you present yourself romantically. Passionate, like that's in the fifth. So there could be changes around that. There could be changes around your hobbies or creative pursuits and ventures. And we will have our first eclipse in Leo um, this year as well, August 12th. So one eclipse each this year, really showing us what the next 2 years is going to bring with this energy. So definitely jot these dates down because you're going to want to keep them in mind to pay attention. And then as far as the Virgo Pisces energy, like whatever you've been moving through since last year or even the end of 2024 to now, there's going to be more around that, more developments, more understanding because we are reaching the end of that transit. So now everything is starting to piece together. I find the first half of the transits with these nodes, like the first year, year and a half, is where the upheavals come and the massive, like, kind of in your face change, and then things will start to come together the last few eclipses. So this year, you'll start to see these houses kind of settle down and piece back together in areas of life, come back together. Um, and then, another area of our life starts to go through massive upheaval. But again, if you have any questions or anything, just comment below. All right, so let's get into the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries energy. So, all of the areas of your chart that will be affected by this, I circled. So Saturn is going to be in Aries from February 13th to 2026. Or sorry, February 13th, 2026 to April 13th, 2028. And then Neptune will be in Aries from February 3rd. Oh, that's not right. That is not right. That is not right. Oh, hold on. Neptune will be in Aries. Um, hold on. Oh, I didn't write it down here. Anyways, Neptune's going to be in Aries from January 26th to 2038, 2039. Yeah, so just that is a typo. Um, it's not February 13th. I knew right away that was wrong. Yeah, because Neptune is shifting in January 26th, literally the end of January. Okay, so this is happening in your first house. So you naturally are quite, impulsive, act now, think later, very much a go-getter type of energy. Naturally is usually, Aries in the first house. Also, you want to check your personal birth chart to see where your ascendant is and if you have any personal planets in this space, because Neptune and Saturn are going to form that conjunction at 0 degrees, the first degree of the zodiac. If you have any personal planets or points around that 0 degree point, you're going to feel this a lot more intensely. So definitely check for that. Now, Saturn rules things like maturity, responsibility, discipline. Saturn is all about boundaries. And so, with Saturn in the first house, there may be a lot showing up for you the next couple of years around your personal boundaries or around your maturity, around are you being responsible? Are there certain areas of your life that you are cutting corners? Saturn is going to check you. Saturn is going to give you an ego death, and there's no fighting Saturn. And if you do, things just become a lot more challenging. The best thing to do is go with the flow, and whatever is showing up for you, try to address it in a responsible, mature manner. Saturn wants you to take accountability. Like that is that Saturnian energy. And when we put in the work and dedication to really do things the proper way, um, the Saturnian rewards can be quite beautiful. It's just that Saturn is all about hard work, dedication, and maturity and responsibility and wants to hold you accountable. So wherever you're not, whatever areas of life where, that's slacking a little bit, Saturn will check you. Now, we also want to utilize the Saturn energy the first couple of years while we have it, because Neptune is going to be in that first house for 14 years. And when Neptune is transiting the houses and the zodiac, the houses that Neptune is in tends to become quite confusing, foggy. Um, Neptune tends to give us rose-colored glasses. We want to remember that the first house is opposite the seventh. So this transit is going to have to do with how you connect to your one-on-one connections and your relationships. It is going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect the maturity level of you and your partner, whether it's that you're not mature enough or your partner's not mature enough, but that can definitely come up over the next couple of years. What you want in relationships, what you're responsible for, what your partner's responsible for, or what you want to be responsible for in relationships can definitely come up with Saturn in the first house. So just keep in mind that Saturn being in that first house is creating an opposition to the seventh and an opposition to your descendant, which can cause a little bit of tension where things may be coming up the next couple of years within your relationships where you're having to balance them out and, figure things out. And Saturn does this just to put us kind of on a better ground, a better footing, and more in alignment. With Neptune here, you may not see relationships quite as clear. You may see relationships with rose-colored glasses, or people may not be able to see you. There may be a facade, or what? No, I don't even want to say that, but maybe people have a hard time connecting with you, or people have a hard time understanding. That's one thing that can happen with Neptune in the first house is like this fear of being misunderstood or being misunderstood a lot. Um, so that can be a thing. So again, we want to utilize the Saturn energy while we have it to build some type of foundation and groundwork with boundaries, because unlike the Pisces transit where Saturn came in and kind of cleaned things up at the end, Saturn is not going to do that. Saturn's coming in more at the beginning of the transit to help us lay some groundwork and foundation to help us kind of ride the next 14 years. Now, Saturn is at fall in Aries, meaning that it's not the greatest energy for Saturn. Saturn doesn't necessarily like to be in Aries because Aries is a very impulsive energy, impatient energy, all about go, go, go. And Saturn is very much slow down, do the work, very practical, very grounding and just let's not cut any corners and do things. Let's think before we act, not act before we think. So it's a bit of a contradicting energy. Saturn rules your 10th house of career and your public image and what you are known for out in the world. So there may be something also over the next couple of years that you are having to address just because of Saturn in that first house and not the greatest placement. There may be things that, yeah, that are just showing up around career, your public image. Um, that, yeah, is just coming to your awareness and having to address, then having to just make some shifts. The Uranus in Gemini transit is going to be from April 25th, 2026 to May 2033. So this is happening in your third house of your community, your neighbors, your neighborhood, local travel. There's quite a lot in that third house, siblings, cousins. The third house also rules your mindset, the way you communicate, thinking, reading, writing, speaking. That's all in that represented in that third house. Um, and so there's going to be a lot of shifts and changes over the next 8 years of, maybe your mindset, the way you communicate, how sociable you are. Like the third house is a very social house. It's about how you socialize with your neighbors and kind of socialize while you're, out going to the store. Do you keep to yourself? Like there's going to be a lot of changes here. The third house also rules like local travel, public transit, like vehicles. And so there could be changes with vehicles. There could be changes with the way you travel. There could be changes even maybe with your siblings. Maybe your siblings are going through some things. Um, there can be changes with like maybe you're wanting to start a podcast or you're wanting to speak more, write more, things like that. That's all that third house energy. So just expect some shifts. Uranus and Gemini is going to create significant changes with the way we communicate to one another, technology, AI, like on a worldwide stage. And collectively, that's how we will see this energy manifest in our own individual lives. Maybe we are incorporating these elements into our day-to-day life in these areas of life, if you kind of get what I'm saying. Okay, so Jupiter and Leo. Jupiter will be in Leo from June 30th, 2026 to July 26th, 2027. So again, you have Leo in the fifth house of children and creativity, passion, romance, hobbies, interests, what you do for fun. So there's definitely, and remember like that the South Node is going to be entering of that fifth house as well. So there's going to be Jupiter is the planet of expansion. And so sometimes, and that's the thing with Jupiter, like yes, it's the great benefic and it's the planet of luck and abundance, but Jupiter can also sometimes bring too much of a good thing, but too much of a bad thing too. It just is that planet of expansion. And so whatever's showing up in this fifth house around children or around romantic connections or around, your hobbies, your interests, your creative pursuits, you're doing it in a big way. Like everything is happening big here in this area of life over the next year. So if you're dating, you're doing it in a big way. If you're having children, you're doing it in a big way. There's something, happening very much in this. And maybe it's just kind of all this energy is out of your 12th and now you're back into your fifth and you're ready to live life and you want to, you know, get back into having fun and who knows, like if you've been kind of isolating the last few years with all this energy in the 12th, this can really give you that push forward. Okay, so now let's talk about the Venus retrograde, which is going to take place in Libra and Scorpio from October 3rd to November 13th, 2026. So Venus is going to station retrograde in Scorpio and then move back into Libra. So this is affecting your eighth house and your seventh house. So your seventh house of relationships and one-on-one connections, and then also your eighth house of your partner's finances, money coming in from outside resources, taxes, inheritance, also psychological healing and transformation. This can also have to do with how you connect on a very intimate level. That eighth house is very intimate. It can be very it represents intimacy. It represents like deeply psychological, emotional, and intimate energy. It also represents fears. I kind of already touched on it in the in the earlier slides, but again, there's going to be a lot of rethinking and reevaluating this area because remember we have that Mercury retrograde here as well around the same time. So there's going to be something that you are rethinking and reevaluating. Venus rules your second house of money, finances, and material possessions, and your personal values, and then also your seventh house of relationships and one-on-one connections. So I think there's going to be a lot you're rethinking around relationships, a lot that you're rethinking about those one-on-one connections and how you connect within one-on-one connections. Now, at the same time, there's going to be a T square from Venus to Mars in Leo in your fifth house and Pluto in Aquarius in your 11th. So there can be some tension here with what you love doing, your hobbies, your interests, your passions, your romantic connections, and friends. And that is causing a lot of tension. And there's going to be like a rethinking, reevaluating, like one clear representation could be of this is like one's wife or one's partner saying like you're going out partying too much you with your friends like here's partying and drinking having fun like living life with your friends your social group your bowling crew or pool crew whatever the case is and it's causing a lot of tension within the relationship so that's like one literal way but it could show up of course in many other ways that was just my example, but there's definitely going to be something, around this time that is not going to be easy because this is not a happy Venus. Like Venus is in Scorpio, which is Mars and Pluto's sign. Mars and Pluto both rule Scorpio. Venus is at fall in Scorpio. She doesn't like to be in Scorpio, and they're both squaring her. So this is a Venus that's very unhappy, that's not enjoying life, that's not enjoying her surroundings, and she's having to address something. So it's going to be challenging, for all of us. So just a heads up. We are at the end of our 2026 horoscope. I hope you enjoyed the horoscope, and I hope that it helps you get through some of the energy and prepare for the year ahead. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you align with my energy and enjoy my content, and I will see you in the next one.